The member for Port Adelaide.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Since this government came to office, power bills have gone up by $1,000 for the average Sydney household. That figure is based on data from the government's own Australian Energy Regulator and the Australian Energy Market Commission reported in the Australian newspaper. Why is the Prime Minister refusing to admit that power prices have never been higher than they have been under this government? Everyone else knows it. Why won't the Prime Minister admit it?
The Minister for Energy and the Environment.
Well, Mr Speaker, the member for Port Adelaide is making up more numbers, Mr Speaker, because we know that power prices increased by 100% under him, and the member for Port Adelaide should know better. You know why? Because Adelaide Brighton, in his own electorate, which has 450 workers, lost power for 36 hours when South Australia had a blackout, Mr Speaker. And we know that in his own electorate, Adelaide Brighton, the company's own electorate that employs hundreds of people, had to book a $13 million penalty or price because of that blackout, Mr Speaker. That is the price of Labor's reckless policies. Now, it takes some kind of genius that the member for Port Adelaide must be to describe the energy policy in South Australia as a hiccup, Mr Speaker. He described it as a hiccup. This is a policy which has led to more than $500 million in expenses in South Australia when they had a statewide blackout, Mr Speaker. This is a policy that led the Premier of Jay Weatherill to spend $110 million on diesel generators that use 80,000 litres an hour and that, when they're supposed to be used in peak summer months, don't work when the temperature's hot, Mr Speaker. That is the Labor policy. It takes some genius in South Australia to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a new gas-fired power station, Mr Speaker. And the Prime Minister might be interested to know that when the Northern Power Station was open in South Australia only got 12% of its energy from Victoria through the Hayward Interconnector, Mr Speaker. 12% in the years 14-15 of brown coal-fired power from Victoria. But in the years 16 to 17, after the closure of the Northern Power Station, how much brown coal did you get from Victoria and South Australia? 20%, Mr Speaker. 20%. So the Labor Party's policy of following down Jay Weatherill in South Australia, who gave them diesel generators that don't work when the sun is out, Mr Speaker, diesel generators that use 80,000 litres an hour, gas-fired power stations that have to be built by the government, more coal-fired power from Victoria than when the Northern Power Station was in operation. That is what the green policies of the Labor Party look like, Mr Speaker. And the member for Port Adelaide should know much better, because in his own electorate, where hundreds of workers are employed, they have had a blackout which has cost their own company money. The member for Port Adelaide should look in his own backyard before asking questions in this place about the prices of power, Mr Speaker.